Yay.
Hi guys, it's Jeff here, the photographer's mentor, and in this video I'm joined by Keltie Maguire, the clarity coach, and Keltie has a fantastic presentation for us here today, which is all about crafting a vision for your photography business. So crafting a future vision. And Keltie's put together a series of 4 webinars altogether that we're going to be doing one a week throughout August. And after today's, we'll be scheduling the one for next Tuesday. Next Tuesday. So we'll be going out at the same time next Tuesday at 2 p.m. and you'll be able to watch this webinar in the same place. So watch out for the post later on today where we'll be putting out a notification for next Tuesday's event for webinar number 2. And also, if you have to go away or you have something to do and you can't watch the full amount of this webinar, if you just follow my hashtag creating successful photographers, you'll see it at the bottom there. And then all you have to do is type that hashtag into the LinkedIn search bar. Then that will bring up all the past posts that I've created and you'll see this webinar here as well. So instead of me just blabbing on and on, I'm going to introduce you to Keltie, and she can talk a little bit more about what this presentation is about, and then we'll head over and bring up the PowerPoint slideshow that goes with it. Thank you, Keltie. Over to you.
Hello. So rather than you blabbing on and on, I'll blab on and on. How's that? Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. Yeah, and I'm really excited today to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is clarity and creating a vision for your business. And I'm going to be sharing specifically why clarity is so important to your business. We're going to be talking about some questions that you can ask to help uncover, greater, more tangible vision for your own business. I'm going to be talking about some of the sort of pitfalls or problems that I see business owners making when it comes to planning their future vision for their business. And we're going to get into lots of other good stuff. As Jeff mentioned, I do have a presentation, but I want this to be conversational. So if you have questions, please ask them. Jeff has promised that he can sort of butt in and the two of us can talk about everything that I'm sharing. So I'm really excited to get into it. And if you have no objections, Jeff, I would share my screen and we can jump right into the presentation.
Yeah, certainly. If you just bring your screen up there. And hi, Kev Timmons. And hi, Peter from Canada, a fellow Canadian there joining us.
Yay!
And I think I'm speaking to Peter on Friday, so that'll be fantastic. So yeah, if you want to bring up your screen there, and I can add you to the feed.
I've just hit share, and of course, it's not wanting me to share right now. Hold on, I'm just going to cancel that and try that again.
Yep.
Okay, screen share. We just did a test, but of course, we know how it goes. There we go. Okay, let me bring things up here. And I'm just going to make sure we've got this in presentation mode. Play from the start. So you let me know.
So what I'll do is full screen so it makes it a bit easier for everybody to see. And I'll remove the banner as well. Right, take it away, Keltie. It's all yours.
Awesome. I'm glad you've got the text sorted. Okay, thank you so much. So again, today we're going to be talking about crafting your photography business future vision. And just briefly, what you're in for, I sort of mentioned this, but we're going to talk about why clarity is important, why I'm a clarity coach, and why you should care about this topic. We're going to talk about some of the best questions you can ask yourself in order to get clear on your future vision. And I'd really encourage you either today with a piece of paper beside your computer or maybe this evening or tomorrow to take some time and to really think about these questions that I'm going to be posing to you today. We're going to be talking about where most people go wrong in this process. So where I see people screw up, when people come to me, when they're feeling really lost, they're feeling stuck, they're feeling dissatisfied in their businesses, I'm going to tell you where I specifically see that happen and why that is. And lastly, we're going to talk about the importance of building a business with you in mind. So first of all, you may be wondering, what's a clarity coach? I've never heard of this before. Is this a made-up title? In effect, I help you figure out what it is you want. So I help you get clear on things and then the steps to make that happen. Because of course, it's wonderful to have a vision for your business, but you also need to set about realizing it and making that happen. So I help people get clarity and I help them take action.
Fantastic.
All right. Any questions, Jeff?
Not yet. No.
Not yet. All right, good. Okay, cool. So why clarity? The fact is, if you don't know what you want, you're never going to get it. And saying this, in some sense, it sounds kind of obvious. It's like, well, of course, I'm not going to get the thing that I don't know what it is I want. But what I saw myself, both in my previous business as a product-based business owner, I was a jewelry designer, as well as conversations with countless entrepreneurs and business owners, is that so often we really just kind of have a fuzzy vision in terms of where it is we're going, the path we're going to take to get there. You might say, I want to be a world famous food photographer, but you don't necessarily have the specifics of how that's going to look and how that's going to fit with your life as a whole. So clarity isn't just about that big picture, but it's really about having specifics in terms of what it is you want. And even more than that, having clarity is about understanding the why behind the what. I think it's important that we're honest with ourselves and that we're in touch with our intentions in terms of, okay, you want to be a world famous food photographer. Why do you want to do that? Is it because you have an undying passion for food? Is it because you want to, bring about this new style of photography that very few people have ever explored? What are your drivers behind this business and behind the chosen path that you have? And I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about why this why piece is so important, and why it's something where a lot of us go astray.
Fantastic. So is clarity very similar? Is it like similar to goal setting, do you think?
Goal setting is a part of it. Goal setting, I would say, are kind of we can think of it as the building blocks that are going to amount to that greater vision. Because you might have a goal to, let's say, earn 6 figures in your business, or 7 figures for that matter. But again, it's kind of tying that back to like, well, what is that money for? Where am I going with this? How do I want to be spending my time, my energy? What's enjoyable for me? So I think of the vision as more like that overarching kind of dream or picture that you have in your mind. And then goals are usually going to be those building blocks in order for us to get there.
Brilliant. So Jackie Chapman, you might find this very interesting, because Jackie had a big problem at the very beginning setting out the clarity for her business and her brand going forward. And now I think she's on a bit of a mission and she knows the direction. So it'd be interesting to get her feedback on this presentation as well.
Yeah, definitely. And in that case, for example, Jackie may find it's easier now to sort of establish goals now that she has a greater understanding of that overall direction that she's moving in, the what it is she's creating, the why drivers behind it. Otherwise, what we can do often with goals is we set goals that can be arbitrary or that we see other people doing. Again, these big numbers, 6 figures, 7 figures. I'm sure in the photography industry, there's certain metrics that people use, but I think it's important that we make sure our vision is our own and it's not just something that we've maybe taken or borrowed from somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so and on that topic, we want to really be in touch with like, whose vision are you creating? Is it yours or is it someone else's? I'm gonna quote a book that I just heard about, not because I've read it, which I haven't. I just heard about this a few days ago, but I believe it's called Wanting or Wanted, and it talks about mimetic desire. And the idea behind this book is that really many or most of the things that we want in society in our lives, it's actually sort of mimicry. It's copying what other people want. And so a lot of us are very out, there's no fault of our own, but we're very out of touch with what we want. Not what our partner wants, not what the rest of the industry says we should want. Again, I'm sure with photographers, there's maybe certain accolades or levels of status or publications you might want to be in. That's kind of considered cachet. That's what other people want. We want to make sure that that vision is actually your own. It's not just what someone told you that you should be going after. So when we have clarity, I like to think of clarity as a compass, because when you're clear on where you're going, when you're clear on your drivers, when you're clear on the steps that you're planning to take to get there, you are going to be able to make decisions that much easier. You're going to be able to say yes and no to opportunities that come your way. You're going to be able to, like today, for example, Jeff and I having had conversations over the last couple months, saying yes to this opportunity was something that came easily to me because I was very clear on where I'm going, what I'm building with my business. So when we have that compass, it's going to make our journey through life and through business just that much smoother. Which doesn't mean it'll be free. Okay, so I want to share now 3 questions to uncover greater clarity in your photography business and life. And the thing I suggest with all my clients is we need to zoom out. So regardless of if you're feeling stuck in a particular aspect of your business, maybe there's a partnership you're considering taking, maybe there's a project you're wondering about, taking part in, you name it. I want you to zoom out and I want you to ask yourself, what kind of life are you building? Forget about business for a second, but really look at your life as a whole. And I want you to get as specific as possible in terms of the qualities of that kind of life. So for example, I personally am building a life of freedom. I think that's a big driver for a lot of business owners. We want to think, what does freedom entail? What does that look like for us? We want to look at how we want to be spending our time, our day to day, what's important to us, what our values are. And of course, there's a lot of different ways that we could look at this. But when you look to the future, of course, we all have lives right now, but when you look to the future and what you're cultivating, spend some time really thinking about what that life looks like. I want to give you a really, specific kind of example, somebody who works in the retail industry, or I should say the clothing industry, and she was creating, ethically, sustainably produced garments that were made in conjunction with women in developing countries. And she really was passionate about this. She was creating beautiful clothing. And she said, I'm thinking about starting a retail store. And we had just finished talking about how much she loves traveling, how much she loves spending her time working really closely with these partnerships, how much she loves being in these other countries, how much she loves this freedom and this travel. And then she says to me, I'm wondering if I should open a store, a physical brick and mortar store. And my thought was, okay, this really sounds at odds with everything she's just described. But when we talked about, are you going to be in that store? Well, I don't think so. Do you want to manage a team of people to manage that store? Well, I don't think so. She had this idea that when you have a clothing line, the next kind of logical step would be to have your own physical presence of a store. But it was totally at odds with the kind of life that she was building.
It's funny you should say that, because a lot of photographers say, I want to have my own studio. And then you'll say, well, why do you want your own studio? You don't necessarily need, and especially now, the way things have changed over the years. Initially that was when I first started out in 2004. That was the dream, to have a studio. But now, there's a lot of photographers, and a lot of photographers I work with who love the flexibility of not having to have a studio, because maybe they're personal branding photographer and they're doing shoots at a client's premises, or at the local park, or down at the beach, or a portrait photographer doing similar things. So, potentially the freedom of working for yourself, and I've seen this with a lot of photographers, could be taken up by running a high street studio that you have to be in 9 to 5 just in case somebody comes in for an inquiry. And so you're spending a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of energy on something that you don't necessarily need.
That's such a good example. And the way I kind of see it is, as business owners, most of us, we start businesses to have a degree of freedom, security within that freedom, but we want to be able to often choose where we put our time, money, energy, etc. And yet oftentimes what happens inadvertently is we're sort of like brick by brick building our own prison around us. And we realize that we've inadvertently created the circumstances that we actually wanted to escape or avoid. Okay, question number 2. This is a really great way to just do a quick pulse check, as I call it, or health check in terms of the current state of your business and your life. And that is to ask yourself, and this is kind of 2 questions in one, what is working in my business and life currently, and what isn't? And I certainly would encourage you to look at things from like a really practical standpoint in terms of what is working, i.e. what's bringing me money, what systems are functioning well, etc. But I'd also look at things from like an emotional sort of enjoyment perspective, because you might, let's say, for example, you're a photographer who really enjoys doing like portraiture, and the corporate side of your business, corporate clients, maybe that's going really, really well. You're making good money, you've got a lot of business, but you actually hate it. Like what you really want to be doing is you really want to be like, capturing more like street life and real people having real experiences. So even though it's working, it might not actually be working for you. So take some time to just really think about what's working in my business, what's not working in my business. And you can look at that, your life as a whole as well. And it can be just a really kind of simple way of looking at like current state of affairs in terms of where you need to be putting more time and energy, the things that are working well, and other areas where you might either want to delegate things, where you may want to delete things. You might just say like, I'm going to turf this side of things altogether, or you're going to have to find a way of doing things.
It's funny, I can give you a good example of that. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I first started on the mentoring side of things. So as it was starting to progress and get bigger, I remember, from the days of having a wedding photography business in the studio, one of the big things was getting the phone to ring, because the phone ringing meant a client. And then when I created this mentoring business, which meant a lot more freedom and a lot more time for myself, and it started getting successful and started becoming, a bigger business. Then the phone started to ring. But when I realized that people weren't ringing to inquire about price lists, they were ringing with problems, or they're ringing with queries about how to brand the business and market the business. All of a sudden my time was vanishing and I didn't want to be answering phone calls. So I went the opposite way. So I took my phone number off everything. I now don't no longer answer my phone unless it's somebody in my phone book. And the whole way of running my business now is to get people to book in for a call. So I can decide when the phone call's answered, they still get the same level of commitment and quality, and they get the questions answered, but sort of like on my terms, which means like if I'm out for the day, I'm out for the day and I'm not getting a distraction from the phone, or I'm not getting my daughter saying, Dad, we're supposed to be out,
Yeah, really good example. And I think, the fact that you took the time, and we'll talk about this in a moment when we look at sort of the problems and challenges I see people having, but the fact that you took the time to kind of hit the pause button and say, okay, this isn't working for me the way it is, I need to change things. It's really easy for us to get on that kind of hamster wheel of, okay, yeah, I'll deal with it. Let's say, for example, you're doing one-on-one coaching or you're launching programs, et cetera. Like at the end of this month, next season, once I get, paid, we can make those excuses forever. It's up to us to say, I'm going to intentionally create and carve out this time to actually evaluate things. And I'd encourage people to do it even when things are going well. Like take 20 minutes once a month. It doesn't have to be that long. And just ask yourself, what worked, what didn't work this month? Okay. Next, what is my wildest vision for the future? I see a lot of people really censor their goals, visions, dreams, what have you. And the reason I encourage people to think about their wildest vision is it's like, just remove any of those sort of blocks that you may have in terms of what's possible for you, what's available for you. If I told you anything was possible, money's no object, all these things, what might that future vision for your life and your business look like? I encourage people to do this for two reasons. One is I believe that your potential is so much greater than you often allow yourself to know. And when I have people and clients say to me, oh, I think maybe this is too big of a vision, my answer most times is dream bigger. Actually, I don't think you're going big enough. If that's what you want, right? And we don't have to want big and all the money and all the accolades and fame just because, but if that's what you want, if you want to work one day a week, like have that wild vision, because it may be more possible than you know. The other thing is, even if you don't end up pursuing that, let's say you say, oh, my wild vision is to be like stomping through the rainforests, photographing monkeys, and I've got 3 young kids under the age of 5, and it's just not possible right now. There's a seed or a kernel of truth in whatever that vision is that I believe you can, if you're creative, start to apply to your business today, right? Maybe it's about like doing a couple trips twice a year. Maybe it's about, photographing some local wildlife. Maybe it's about, et cetera, et cetera. But we have to start with that big picture wild vision in order to really get at what it offers us and what specifically intrigues us about that.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I think, like you said, there isn't any limitation. I always say, like, your vision for the future, there's no limitation on how big it can go. The only sort of caveat is how long it's going to take, so you can have that goal. It can be a really big goal. It can be a big dream, but it might take a little bit longer to get there than it would if you just reined it back a bit. But think really big and go as big as you can.
Yeah. And I think that just reminds me, I could be mistaken, but I believe in week 4, we might be talking about this idea of prototyping our ideas. And if we aren't, I'll make sure we address that in one of the other talks. But there can be ways before we get to that wild, big vision that might be 10, 15, 20 years in the future. There are ways that we can experience aspects of that today. It just requires a little bit of ingenuity and looking at things in a different perspective and light.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do most people go wrong in this process? When people come to me and they're like, I'm so unclear, confused, overwhelmed, stuck, I feel unhappy, maybe outwardly they have success, they're doing well. This can be really tough. And I think specifically in, we'll call it sort of like professions like photography, like I was a jewelry designer. Those are considered very kind of glamorous, sexy to the outside world. And it can be very, very hard if you are having this outward success, recognition, you name it, and you're not feeling happy in it. So where do people go wrong? When does that happen? Here's how we screw this up. First of all, I believe way too often we look at our business in a bubble. So we tend to neglect the fact that business is a part of our overall life. And this is where I see, mistakes being made with traditional business mentorship, coaching, et cetera, is we look at how can we optimize that business? How can we hit revenue goals? How can we get more clients? How can we attract the right people? How can we, be more productive, you name it, but we forget to look at the fact that business is just one aspect of our life, and we want to make sure that business we're building fits with our overall life. When I moved to Germany a few years ago from Canada, I had this product-based business, and I realized how much at odds a product-based business was with the kind of life of freedom and not really having connection to like things or places, etc. was. But if I looked just at that business and how I could be successful in it, I never would have arrived at that conclusion if I didn't look at my life as a whole.
And I think another thing, and Jonah's just pointed something out there that, COVID has been a struggle for him, and he's had to, but you have to think outside the box. And I think recently what's happened in the past 18 months has made people think, you just don't keep in this single aspect of your business, this single bubble. You have to be more adaptable. You have to have multiple streams, other ways of money coming in from your business, other diversities, because there is every chance that this might happen again, in 6 months' time, so you have to be more prepared than you potentially were before.
100%. Yeah, it's about having that like broader perspective and thinking not just that things have to be one certain way because that's how they've always been done, but again, like photographers, creative industry, right? Like use your creativity, think of new ways of innovating, new offerings, new services, etc. Don't just kind of stay in your narrow lane because that's the way things, quote unquote, should be. Okay, another way, we do what we think we should do or what others expect of us. I know when I was considering closing my last business, that played a really big role because I felt like if I was to close my business, people would think I was a failure. People thought I should continue with my business because, I was great at jewelry designing. I had a admittedly small but growing business. So that can really play around with our minds in terms of how we perceive what we choose to do because we feel, whether real or not, or imagine what others expect or think we should do.
And the reality is, the funny thing is, I can really speak from experience here. Like 7 years ago, I lost a lot of money, about 160,000 pounds in a business venture that went completely wrong, and I couldn't go back to my hometown. I had to move away, and I moved away to the countryside because I felt embarrassed. I felt a failure. And I didn't want to be associated around people who I used to knock about with because I thought they would be looking at me as a failure. And the end thing is they didn't give a toss. They were too busy running their own lives to be bothered about thinking any less of me, and they would never have thought any less of me anyway. Friends and family wouldn't have. But you have that preconception, and sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. So
100%. It can be really hard to kind of shift that perspective and to recognize, like, as you said, most people are more concerned with their own business. Most people's lives are their own mess. They're probably not too preoccupied with you, and if they are, well, good for them. It's your life, right? You're the one who ultimately needs to live and embody it. So, okay. Here's another way we screw it up. We refuse to acknowledge that things have changed. So, while people talk about sort of, values that we have, for example, as being really those, those fixed kind of markers in our lives, I believe even our values and what we place importance on and what we want can and will change. Myself, 39 years old, I certainly don't want the same things I wanted at 19 or 29, and probably not what I'll want at 49. So when we fixate ourselves in this point and we say, well, when I started this, photography endeavor where I'm going to be, jetting around the world, doing whatever kind of photography when I was 25, that might not fit your life, and that might not be what you want anymore. You might really want to have more of a local business. You might have gotten that travel bug out of your system. You might, COVID happened, right? That changed. It's not always our own choice either, but we need to acknowledge that life moves on and changes, and we have to be able to adapt with that. If we have a real fixed mindset, we're just going to end up at a real conflict with the way things are.
Totally. And I think, I felt that at the weekend because I photographed a friend's wedding, a Navy friend's wedding. And I used to do 80 to 100 weddings a year. And I did his wedding on Sunday, and I was in bed by 9:30. I was absolutely shattered. And I'm 50 now, and I'm thinking, weddings are a young man's game. I couldn't, but 20 years ago, I was like, give me more weddings. I want more weddings, The money was fantastic, but now give me all the weddings in the world and all the money for them, and I wouldn't like to do them. I much prefer doing what I do now.
Totally. Whereas if you put pressure on yourself to say, hey, I'm doing all these weddings and I'm earning really good money. I've been in the business this long. I'm like sought after. If you wouldn't acknowledge that you and what you want has changed, that would cause a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of feeling very stuck, right? A lot of feeling left with very little option. So,
yeah.
Okay, we learned to settle. I think, again, a lot of people come to me, they're like, is this as good as it gets? Like, is this how good my business, my life is going to feel? Maybe I'm just wanting too much. I'm hoping things will feel more enjoyable, fun, I'll make more money, whatever, than I am. So when it goes back to what I was talking about having that even bigger, wilder vision for ourselves. If we learn to settle, we will be really in a fixed position where we're not going to be moving forward and moving towards our true vision. Okay. And then lastly, we don't take the time to check in with ourselves. Life's busy. We've got 1,000,001 things on the go. Our businesses demand of us, our families, our health, our friends, all these things. And if you constantly are saying later, you have this niggling feeling that maybe you're not quite on the right track. Maybe some things need to change, maybe just in small ways. If you don't take that time to identify what those things are and to make some changes, it's really just going to lead you down a sort of negative spiral.
Yeah, and funny, someone's just said, he knows the feeling because he suffered a redundancy, and it wasn't his fault, but he felt ashamed by it. And I think maybe sometimes then it's a case of looking for the positives in something that is a negative. So now that's happened, it's time for him to bump up his virtual tours business and move forward. I always think that there's everything happens for a reason, and even there's something nice to come out of everything, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I always say I don't think everything happens for a reason, but I'll find a reason in everything. How's that? Like I've had things
that's true. Yeah,
that are they're awful, but I have to. What happened or what has happened is right. We can't change that past. I believe that we can choose to assign a different meaning or story to it. And that sometimes, even I look at people tell me about why did I close my last business and all my reasons and the way things work. I don't even know if half of that is actually entirely true, but it's true for me because that's the meaning I assign to it. Those are the reasons that I found out of this dissatisfaction, this discomfort, this unknowing of what was next. So yeah, I think that's some good advice for that person to perhaps, without sounding like the, bright, sunny optimist, like what are those positives? What will this bring forward that's good? All right, so very last today, let's talk just a little bit more about how you can build a business with you in mind. And I want to share, why we want to do this, because I think in business, as I mentioned, I think in some of the kind of promo content we had for today's session, we all talk about building a business around our customers, right? It's what our customers want, how our customers talk, how our customers think. Those things are important. Of course, we need customers, we need to sell to them, we need to make them happy. But I actually think first and foremost, we also need to consider what it is that we want and how we can build a business around ourselves. What feels good, what we're good at, what we enjoy, how we want to spend our days. And there's a few different reasons for that. So first of all, it's going to be most sustainable. Over the long run, if you're going to be in business for the next 10, 20, 40 years, however long, you need to make sure your business is being built in a way that you actually have the time, the energy, and the enjoyment in order to continue with it. If you're constantly creating your business, your offerings, etc., in ways that others demand, but you don't like, you're going to burn out. You're going to be miserable. You're going to hate what you I also would argue, and I just mentioned this because some people may say, well, it's a little bit selfish to kind of build a business with you in mind. What about all these other people I'm working with? I actually think that it's serving, not selfish, to build a business around you. And the reason is, when you enjoy what you do, when you have excitement and passion and you want to over deliver for people, and when you're going out there, that shows. That's going to help your clients. Like, I can imagine if I hired a photographer and I kind of had the sense they hated what they did and they didn't really want to be there and it was boring for them to photograph me, that's not going to serve me, and it's not going to serve them in their business as well.
Definitely, and I've seen that so many times before in the photography industry. Especially in like school photography, nursery photography. The kids come home with pictures and they look so miserable because the photographer's not enjoying the job. And Richard's just commented there. Richard is a fantastic portrait photographer, and the reason Richard gets so fantastic results of his subjects is because he's passionate about it. He loves it. He has the passion and he enjoys it. If he didn't enjoy it, that would come through in his creativity and in the way he interacts with his clients, and they would look miserable on all the photographs.
Totally, 100%. Yeah. And along those lines, that's going to allow you to have greater impact because, we don't have endless reserves of energy, of course, but we're going to be more likely to put out a good, concerted, long-term effort, and we're going to be able to show up. We're going to do a great job. We're going to impact people in the world and the clients that we serve in a bigger way if the business is built to leverage those things that you really enjoy and that feel good and that you're good at. There's no sense in building a business around, let's say you can do 5 different types. I mean, I don't know, photographers might theoretically be able to photograph anything, but it's not going to help anybody. You're not going to be impactful if you're really terrible at something.
Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, it's fun, right? Like, why did we start a business in the first place? Most of us to enjoy ourselves, to have that freedom, to have, limitless income possibility, to be able to have independence. So let's have fun. Let's build our businesses with us at the center. So how do we do this? I love questions as a coach, clarity coach. So let's look at a few questions. We can look at what parts of our day are most energizing. So of course, as we know, some people probably assume photographers just photograph all day, but we know that you're also running a business, just like jewelry designers don't just design jewelry. So when you look at your day, what parts of your day are most energizing for you? Likewise, you can look at what's most draining. If you could get rid of one part of your business, what would that be? And again, sometimes we can just axe something altogether. I know one example you and I have talked about is like people doing all their own edits and everything like that. Like that might be something a lot of photographers either don't enjoy or are not well served doing. So maybe that's something that you can, hire out somebody else to help you with, or maybe that's not maybe with that specifically, but maybe it's something that you could forgo altogether. If you hate showing up on Facebook, maybe don't be on Facebook. Find a platform that you enjoy using more. All right, what am I really good at and enjoy? I think we need to look at the intersection of these two things. And of course, we want to look at the overlap with what customers are wanting. But we shouldn't, we can all think of examples of people who are really good at their profession. They were smart. Mom and dad wanted them to be a doctor, a lawyer, but they hate it. And of course, there's things we really enjoy. Like I love lazing around reading a book, but I'm probably not going to make money from it. So ideally, we need to have both of those things, enjoyment and being good at it.
And Jackie Chapman's just said marketing. I know that Jackie really means she loves marketing, not that she hates marketing. Isn't that right, Jackie?
Cool. So those, when we look at the things we love, we want to think about how we can leverage that, how we can do more of that. We talk about creative offerings. It's like for Jackie, she can, of course, leverage her ability and enjoyment of marketing in her own business, but maybe there's potential offerings for her to be able to support other photographers with that. I don't know. What feels easy? I mentioned this because a lot of times the things that come naturally and feel easy to us, we overlook. We think, well, everybody knows how to do that. That's not a big deal. Who cares? Maybe you're super fast and you do a really good job with your edits. And you're like, I don't know, it takes me like 2 seconds, or the presets. I have like presets dialed. As you can probably all tell, I'm not a professional photographer, but if something feels easy to you, don't overlook that, because that's of value to someone. And again, it may be something that you can really double down on, do more of it in your business, or potentially something where there's a business offering there as well. Right.
Definitely. And I mean, like you said, that, the presets and the editing, there's so many people wanting to learn that, and like, Richard with his, 40 years as a portrait photographer, there's so many people want to learn about lighting, and so many people want to learn about posing. So like we're talking about, the adapting the business and having those multiple stream of incomes, so that if things happen again where the photography studio has to close for a certain length of time, then you can sell your online courses, you can do your training for people as well.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, like, for example, I think it was Richard you said, but like, let's say lighting, you're like, I don't know, it comes naturally to me. I just see it. I suggest for people, if there's something that you really have dialed, if there's a particular process or a methodology of doing something, do what I call decoding easy, which is really sit down with a piece of paper or Google Doc and actually break down. If you had to tell someone, you might say, oh, I can get my lighting set up in like 15 minutes. And most people, it takes an hour. Decode it. Is it because you've got your bags organized a certain way and you plug in this one first and you do the adjustment with the lightometer? Break it down, because again, it's not going to be easy for everyone. And you may have discovered a way of doing things that could be valuable to people who would pay money for that.
And funny, Terry's just said one thing he doesn't like doing is the personal branding aspect, talking about himself. And I've just thought of a way, to turn around the negative. So, Terry, if you take, like, imagine you take brilliant pictures of personal branding for other people. Don't talk about yourself and how good your photography is. Talk about the results that your photographs have got for the client. So make the client the star of the show. Make the client the person in your posts, in your Facebook post, your LinkedIn post. Tell their stories, as opposed to sort of like talking about yourself. If you don't like to big yourself up, and I think that's a big thing, especially us British have, is putting ourselves out there and being a bit more confident. And I know I have a lot of US clients, and they don't have anywhere near as many hang-ups about bigging themselves up as we do here in the UK. So that could be one way to get around that, Terry, is talk about how your clients have achieved stuff, use their testimonials, their stories to big yourself up.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of potential for that. I mean, you can, of course, have written verbal testimonials. You could potentially have interview or conversation testimonials. You could feature aspects of their business that you find cool. There's lots of potential to explore there. So that's a great idea, Jeff. The last question to ask yourself is, what are your non-negotiables? So in life and in business, but again, I zoom out, look at life as a whole. Like, what are those things that you are not willing to bend on? I think, it's great to be a flexible person. It's great to say, hey, I'm willing to kind of, let's say, have flexibility with my clients. Usually they come to me, but sometimes I'll come to them, let's say. But your non-negotiables are going to be those things that, whether it's maybe you don't negotiate your fees, that might be a non-negotiable. Maybe a non-negotiable is like, you need to make sure that you're with your family on the weekends. You're not going to be traveling. And I wouldn't suggest having like a huge laundry list of these things, but even if you have 4 or 5 kind of key non-negotiables that you really have sort of written in stone. Again, if one of your non-negotiables is I don't work weekends, that's fixed. You never have to make that decision again when it comes time to assess an opportunity, a partnership, a trip. No, I don't travel weekends. Like it's a no, or it's a yes. So that's another way to look at these things.
Funny enough, when you talk about that non-negotiable, I think when we had the boudoir studio and we were so busy at one of our busiest points, we were doing about 1,000 shoots a year doing boudoir, and people used to say, oh, well, I can't find any time to come to the studio because I work a full time, 9 to 5. I can't get in during the day, and your weekends are always fully booked. And I'd say something like, oh, that's fine. So we do allow you to come in on an evening. There's just an additional £50 charge. Yeah. And it's funny, then people will go back, I can manage Wednesday afternoons, And I think when you give a bit, and I think that's one thing that we do, we tend to give a bit to customers because we're frightened of losing them. But when you're very confident and you say, no, this is what I do, I don't give a discount on this, this is my price, say no, that's what Richard says, you don't say no. Saying no is a really good way of being more confident. And you look at, brands like Mercedes and BMW and a lot of the big premier brands, they're quite confident about their price, confident about the higher price, confident about not giving the discounts. This is the price, this is what it is. And I think when you communicate that, you have more respect from your clients as well, don't you? As well as respect for yourself.
100%. And it also, this all comes back to clarity, right? Because it comes down to being clear on what we will and won't tolerate, what is acceptable to us and what isn't. And I think that having these boundaries, being clear, having these non-negotiables, it actually also serves your client. Like for me as a coach, for example, if I was, and I have availability for my private clients to connect with me, and we have certain channels of doing that. But if I was at their beck and call where they can call me up at 2 a.m, cry their eyes out to me, that's not going to help them, right? Like that's not allowing them to be self-sufficient. That's certainly not going to help me. It's going to create resentment in our relationship. So I think for us to also understand that these sorts of boundaries, these non-negotiables, they are oftentimes very beneficial for the client as well. And at the end of the day, it's your business. So why would you say yes to or agree to certain things that aren't in line with what it is you want?
Yeah, and the thing is, that is the funny thing is, a lot of us left 9-to-5 jobs. I left a job in the military, being a military photographer, to become my own photographer, because I hated the fact that I always had that thing that if I booked a holiday, if something happened, I could be recalled. When I got married, I got 2 days leave and I was recalled back to work. So you leave to have this freedom, and then you actually end up creating less freedom for yourself than you had in your full-time job, because you allow not the employer to call the shots, but you allow the client to call the shots, and you back yourself into a corner.
100%. Yeah. Okay, so very last of all, just a few kind of suggestions here. When we're building a business with us, you in mind, it requires self-awareness, first of all. It requires us to be in touch with, again, what's working, what's not working, what do we enjoy, what are our strengths, all those things. And that's going to be a constant work in progress for us that, will evolve as we evolve. It requires us to explore things. So sometimes it's, doing that shoot after hours and realizing, holy heck, I don't want to do that again, right? Sometimes we've got to kind of make those mistakes or missteps in order to figure out what does and doesn't work. And then lastly, it does require us to take intentional action. So it's not just about blindly, a great example, like I remember beginning of this year, it's like, everybody's got to be on Clubhouse. Oh my God, we got to be on Clubhouse. Where's my invitation? And I remember stepping back and just saying, okay, hold on. Like, let's just think a little more about this. Does it serve me to be on this platform? What's it going to take me away from in order to be there? Does my business require this? Does it feel good? And most people, they just kind of act in accordance with all these different messages that are coming their way, as opposed to really acting with intention in line with that clear vision they have.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a little mention here. I have a guide on my site. If anybody's like, I don't even know what I want, I don't know where to start, I have these 4 questions. If you like my questions, I've got more of them, that you can help uncover what you want. That's on my website. And then teaser, which is next week, we're going to talk about the fears that are holding you back. And we're going to talk about how these fears manifest in our businesses. And hint, it has a little to do with one of these P-word topics that Jeff's been talking a lot about in the group. So,
so could that be procrastination by any chance?
Might be procrastination, yeah. So fears don't always show up as, oh, I feel really afraid. Oftentimes it involves other types of behaviors that we're doing that can be sort of self-sabotaging or not really moving us towards that vision. So we're going to talk about fears next week. We're going to talk about some tactics on how to manage those and how to move through them, because ultimately we're not going to get rid of the fear. We're going to have to learn how to have forward momentum in spite of them. So, alrighty, I'm going to stop sharing.
Fantastic. Jackie's just asked what day next week. So Jackie, I'm just going to set up, as soon as I come off this, I'm going to set up a new event on StreamYard, and that will be scheduled for the same time next week. So Tuesday next week at 2:00, and also it will go into the private group, the Awesome Photographers group, my private mentoring group, which Keltie is also a member of. So if you have any questions, you can also tag Keltie inside the group as well. And if you follow the hashtag creating successful photographers, then you will get a notification and you'll see that the next live comes up. And then obviously if you need to sort of watch back, then you can see this back underneath that hashtag. So you just scroll to that hashtag, you can see it at the bottom there, and then you can watch this back as many times as you want. And if you have any questions, you can put the comments on, and then either myself or Keltie will jump on them and get back to you.
Yeah, definitely will. That was fun. Thank you. I'm excited for our next 3 sessions, and I
It
appreciate
was really good. It was really good,
Yeah,
and quite a few things for us to think about and questions to ask ourselves. And like you say, quite often we do forget about ourselves when creating our business, and I think that's a really big. So, Bill, many thanks. Link to the questionnaire.
I can link to that guide for you. I can link to the guide.
Yeah, if you pop that in the comments, that would be
link to the
fantastic.
landing page. So, totally. Thank you. Thanks everybody for all the positive comments.
Brilliant.
Back. Wonderful. And thanks for
Thanks
having
again.
me.
No problem, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye now.